Hey, friends. This is Dr. Patrice Buckner Jackson, but you can call me PBJ. Welcome to another episode of Heartwork with PBJ, where we are disrupting cycles of burnout and compassion fatigue so that you can serve from the heart. Listen, friends. I need your help. If you would subscribe and share and rate and comment wherever you're listening to this episode, wherever you listen to this podcast, it helps us get this message out to more people. That's how the algorithms work. So do me a favor, make sure you let us know you're listening, say something back to us, subscribe so that we can keep getting this good message out. Friends, I'm so excited about these next few episodes. So as I shared with you all, I had a plan for opening the Heartwork Academy right now. So it's May 1st. Today would have been our orientation. But I've been led to hold and wait on that as I'm doing other things. But in preparing, I had the opportunity to interview a few ladies who've been a part of the Heartwork Community and Heartwork Academy. And I still want to share these episodes with you. These phenomenal women not only have they experienced transformation, but their stories are going to be a blessing to you. I believe that you're going to see yourself in their stories. So I'm not going to wait to share these episodes with you. I'm going to share them now. So over the next couple of weeks, you are going to have the opportunity to meet several members of the Heartwork Academy, Heartwork Community. So, friends, for the last couple of weeks, I've been introducing you to members of the Heartwork Academy, these phenomenal, powerful women who are a part of my heart, who have allowed me to be a part of their lives in one way or another. All of them have been a part of the Academy, but we also are connected in other ways. And today, this woman that I'm going to introduce you to, you'll see, you'll feel it. You're going to feel it yourself. I don't even have to tell you. So, Janessa Dunn, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so honored to introduce you to these people.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it as well. And I am just super happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for sharing, that your talent and your wisdom and, your calling with us. It's very, very enlightening and something that we can all embrace and apply to so many areas of our lives. So thank you for utilizing your platform to share that with so many wonderful people as well. Um, my name is Janessa Dunn, and just a little bit about me. I'm originally from Birmingham, Alabama, born and raised in Alabama. I attended college at Georgia Southern University, which is where I met Dr. Jackson, at the time, Dr. Buckner, and then moved over to Dr. Buckner Jackson, amongst other wonderful people. And it's that's actually at Georgia Southern where my passion for higher education administration was birthed in my profession and in so many different ways. And so I had so many great exemplars who care so deeply about the word, so deeply about students and their development. And Dr. Jackson was most certainly one of those individuals, whether she knew it or not, just exuded this beautiful light about this field and care for everyone, her colleagues, staff, and students, and so many others. I will say that I work in enrollment management in the admissions field. I'm going to be very honest with you. Admissions is notoriously known to be a high turnover, high burnout profession where we tend to joke around that it's either 3 or 30. You're either sticking in it for 3 or less years or you're in it for life. And I have surpassed the 3 years. And so
Yes, yeah.
I am in it. I am definitely in it. And I truly love this work. And I worked as a student in the Office of Admissions at Georgia Southern and ended up going to grad school and continuing at another institution in Tennessee and now in North Carolina. And so for me, it's so great to be able to apply what I've learned, but also at the same time, it's a high-paced environment, and
Mm,
in compassion fatigue and so many other things are rampant
yeah.
across the staff and across students. So I'm excited to talk about that today.
Absolutely, absolutely, Janessa. And I one of the things that I love about my career is the continued connection to my students. I always say that you all give us the honor of being a part of your life. It's beyond a job, especially when we can stay connected. And I watched you as a student leader on campus, and how you led and represented the university and yourself and your professors and the college that you were in. You were and still are one of those shining stars. So it does not surprise me at all the phenomenal leader and professional you are right now. And to watch you rise and to watch you go is one of my greatest joys. It's one of my greatest joys. So I just need to say that before we get into this conversation. I am so proud of you, but I'm not surprised at all. I'm not surprised at all. So you mentioned your career field being in admissions, and there are a lot of folks who are educators who are part of the Heartwork community. So shout out to all of our administrators and student affairs and enrollment management and teachers and everybody. Shout out to all of y'all. But shout out to our educators. For those who are not familiar with admissions or with enrollment management, and how in the world can that be connected to compassion fatigue? Because all you're doing is reviewing applications, right? That's all you do, right? We know better. So help us understand the heart of the work that you do.
Oh wow, that's a loaded question. To be honest with you, because you're right, it is not simply making an admissions decision and moving that student's application along. I always like to describe us as admissions officers as advocates. We are looking at students as whole people with their experiences and their backgrounds and their lived experiences, the experiences of their families who influence their trajectory as well. And all of that matters. And so when we are looking at a student, we're looking, of course, at their grades. We're looking at, what their academic interests may be. But oftentimes we're looking at what hardships they have endured, especially during this time. But in the last couple of years, that has been exacerbated for many families during the pandemic. We're also looking at what drives them, what keeps them and keeps them going, what makes them tick. And so that brings this level of excitement of like, wow, this student is going to go to some really great places. I hope they come to my institution, but if they don't, they're going to be just fine. They're going to have this incredible, impactful academic and life experience, and also too, it's also an area where you're essentially putting yourself in a student's shoes.
Mm,
You are required, in my opinion, to be fully empathetic for our students, and to advocate on their behalf, like their lawyer, but a really good one, at the end of the day. And
mm,
so when you're doing that for hundreds and thousands of students in a short period of time on a year by year basis, one, you have these inevitable connections where you want to see where these students land. You enjoy this, their life trajectory, but also at the same time, that's a lot of weight.
yeah.
It's a lot of weight, whether that's good, bad, or the ugly. And how do you keep yourself aligned? How do you keep your cup full,
Mm.
year after year after year, when times are becoming more challenging? And so yes, it's not just making that admissions decision. It's really looking at the life of the student.
Yes, absolutely. What I love about what you've said for you and for those who are listening, sometimes we don't realize the secondary impact of our work. So it may not, that's what compassion fatigue is. it's not your baggage, right? So it's not your trauma, it's not your trouble, it's not your challenge, whether it may be finances to go to school or some traumatic incident that a student has been through, or they're describing homelessness or food insecurity, or maybe it's none of that, but they really want to go to school and maybe they don't have the grades. So they have this dream, but there's this barrier for them to get to the dream. Whatever the challenge is, you and your team, you consume those challenges and you take them on to a certain extent because you try to resolve as many of those as you can, not just for the sake of the university, but for the sake of these people who have this plan and have this dream and they want to accomplish this big goal. And sometimes I think we lose or we don't realize the impact on us when we're caring for other people. I think about teachers who have children in their classrooms and they know that the only time these children eat is lunchtime and breakfast at school. I think about nurses and medical professionals who have to break bad news or have to support someone who can't have a family member with them, especially during COVID, or having to break bad news and help family members understand what's going on, or be the mediator between the doctor and the family so that there's some bedside manner and some care. It's not your baggage, but it has an impact on you. When you work with your empathy meter on high, that means that it's not just another application. It's not just another possible student. It's not just an enrollment number, but it's a life. It's a life. And acknowledging that working through and caring for those lives impacts your life is so important. It's so important. So thank you for acknowledging that and for sharing that, because we don't realize that compassion fatigue is not necessarily because our life has the challenges. Compassion fatigue comes because we're serving people. And anytime you're serving people, you are going to come head on with life. And that could mean so many things. So, Janessa, as such an accomplished woman, you are moving through your career like lightning. It might not feel like that to you. Maybe I'm getting old, but it really feels like that to me. You are almost done, almost Dr. Dunn. You're almost done. I mean, like footsteps away from your doctorate degree, all the things that people would say, man, that's success. Like she's got it going on. She's got it all together. With all that going on, what attracted you to the Heartwork Academy?
That's a great question. And thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
What attracted me was honestly, I know that I want to be in this field and want to serve students, families in this field for a long time. I know that I have such a passion and calling for this area, but also at the same time, I found myself in a place where I was being depleted. I didn't have energy. I found myself waking up one morning and I'm like, can I do this another year, another month? I was physically, mentally, emotionally exhausted. And for me, that took place during the pandemic. I knew and I saw signs, before the pandemic of like, okay, I'm ready, I'm excited, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and like putting my hands in so many buckets to really just grab as much information as I can and to soak in the experience because I enjoyed it. I worked in a place that allowed me to take part in professional development, to take part in committees, and to do a lot of wonderful work. But also, I did not prioritize myself in that process. And when the pandemic hit, that was my moment where I slowed down enough to be like, "Whoa, what's happening?" I remember sleeping a lot. I remember trying to get my focus. It's almost as if you're running like a wheel,
Mm.
and then all of a sudden someone puts like a stroke in the wheel, and so it keeps it from going, and so you're so used to going and turning over so many times, but then all of a sudden you have something that's stopping, you're like, I'm like, I don't even know what this is. Like, what is this place? I didn't know
Oh.
where I was, and there was it was a time of deep reflection for me, and I needed something to fill my cup. I needed something to fill my cup from a personal perspective, but also from a professional perspective. There's some spaces where I'm like, the work in higher education is somewhat unique. It's not always applicable to corporate America, although there are some similarities, but there are also some ways that I'm like, you know what? I really feel like Dr. Jackson would be incredible. And actually, I had a conversation with you before the Heartwork
You
Academy
did.
began, because you gave me some incredible advice that I needed at that time. And I was like, oh, man, I need to stay connected. I needed that wisdom and, these questions to ask myself in an intentional way. And when you open up the opportunity, I was like, yes, let me get on this, because I knew how influential it would be for me.
I'm so grateful that you brought attention to the impact of the COVID pandemic and how it caused so many of us who are addicted to busy to stop. And that was not easy. That was not easy when we are used to accomplishing, when we are used to progress, when we are used to moving and shaking. I mean, in your career, you're on planes, you're in cars, you probably live more out of your suitcase than you do your dresser drawers, especially certain seasons of the year. And you do it very well. And we encountered something that made us stop. I was on a call last week with a group, and there was a person on that call who shared that not being able to be connected to people impacted her more than she ever thought. And she's still struggling with how do I recover, because she's such a connector. She is such an extrovert. And she still can't fully because there are immunocompromised people in her home. So she still has to be careful. So not having that contact and having your normal routine, what you're accustomed to, having it literally halted, having it literally stopped. I think it took so many of us to a reflective point, and we had to question, well, who am I again? It Wait a minute, because we were just left alone with us.
Yes. Hmm.
Mm-mm.
Yes.
Yeah, and not in a way of there's necessarily anything wrong with us, but sometimes we're so busy and busy becomes a distraction that we don't get that self-reflection time. All we have time to think about is the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And COVID caused us, or it required us to stop and not have the next thing. And that was difficult for a lot of people. Yeah. Yeah. What would you say was the greatest impact or the thing that you remember, or what was it from the Heartwork Academy that had an impact on you?
Oh my goodness. One, I really, really enjoyed connecting with others who were going through very similar situations, whether they were in higher ed or not.
Mhm.
I really enjoyed those, honestly, smaller group settings, to be able to be intentional and to ask questions and to know it was a safe space and to walk through it,
Mhm.
and have people, one, not only empathize but also say, like, what has worked well for them, and what resources have they been. But I would also say too, Dr. J, and I always call you Dr. J, PBJ, um you know um your facilitation is also very important. And I think being seen and being heard, I mean, there were moments where my tears would literally come to my eyes, to be able to say, this is exactly what's going on. And and being able to be intentional, and what I'm experiencing as a professional with compassion fatigue. And I'm going to be very frank, like I was participating in parallel with counseling sessions, and and it was such an added bonus and added value to me having both of those experiences, where there were some areas where, sometimes a professional perspective in that field is necessary and important. And then there are other times where you really need that coaching. You really need someone who is able to pour into you for your specific field, who knows it. um,
Yeah.
and even if it's not your specific field, someone who gets the hard work that comes along with that. And so having both of those simultaneously for me was a win-win situation, and I'm
Mm.
so very thankful. But so it's not, it's more about the platform, the facilitation, the honestly, the atmosphere, the setting that is created
Mm.
for these type of conversations. It's something that I couldn't find anywhere else.
Oh my goodness. So first of all, yes, I always encourage everybody. Counseling along with the academy is a good idea because we're not counselors there. So that's not what we're doing. But to have that counseling support along with the journey that we take together, I always encourage it. But the community, oh my goodness. To have, and we started out with a bigger group and then we started meeting in smaller groups. And to have you all come together from your different perspectives and different lives, but to find the common thread and literally just, I watched you support each other. I watched you encourage each other. As one person was sharing, you could see that other people resonated with what they were saying. And to hear people say, I get that. I understand that, from talking about our childhood all the way through our profession right now, to sit in a room where you're not judged. You don't have to perform. You don't have to be perfect. No one is grading you. No one is evaluating you. This is a place, and we say safe place a lot, but I think we need to be careful because every place is not safe for everybody. But it's truly, truly, truly a safe place where we get you. We get you. We understand it. And there were even some connections in the room that we didn't realize. We didn't know who was coming. We didn't know who was coming. But when those connections came together, it was just powerful. Even for me being in the room with you all and being connected and walking through with you all, it was powerful to be in the room with people who get it, and you didn't have to explain it. You didn't have to over explain it. You didn't have to justify the
Mhm.
weight or the burden that you were feeling. You didn't have to feel bad about the emotions that you had because you were in the room with people who get it. The people who get it. So, Janessa, you are a millennial leader. Is that fair to say?
That's right.
Yeah, and your generation, and I'm not far off from it, I'm just
Of
saying.
course, of course. I see you.
But your generation, I'm watching, really struggle with this hustle and grind mentality. And with this idea that I should wake up famous tomorrow, that I should wake up in purpose tomorrow, that I should wake up, with the goal accomplished just quickly. Like I want it now. I want it now, and you all have so much of this information coming in at you from social media and other places. The pressure, I think the pressure is more than it's ever been. So, can you speak to other millennial leaders and talk to them a little bit about how you navigate the pressure?
Whew. Wow. Okay. It's so interesting because I describe myself as an old soul in so many different ways, and it's so interesting. Ever since I was 5 years old, I was kind of I was one of those kids who were kind of. My mom sent me back to my room because I need to stay out of grown folks' business, and I just was so intrigued in so many different ways. And for me, it's so interesting because being a millennial, I think we get such a bad rep. in so many different ways in terms of being lazy and being undriven, who don't want to work, who don't have a work ethic, who are willing to fly all over the place, like the wind. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, I think it has a lot to do with having meaning in what we do. We feel very, and I am cautioning myself because I know I can't speak for all millennials. I can speak from only my lens, and so I want to be careful there. But in my opinion, I think that millennials, we as millennials, are very driven for something that has meaning, that is greater than ourselves, and we want to align ourselves with that. So if we're going to align ourselves with a job, we want to make sure that that job has impact to something that also touches our mission and our core values. And if there is a misalignment there, is that the job for us? And so we're less likely to have that strong loyalty, staying in a company or organization or school or whatever that may be for 20, 30, 40 plus years. But at the end of the day, and there may be some who still do, but at the end of the day, it has a lot more to do with, can I align myself with that mission, and can I have impactful work? Can I actually contribute meaningfully that way? And that is a lot of pressure. It's really hard to figure that out. Even when I was at Georgia Southern, I was a chemistry major. I was planning on going to pharmacy school, and I decided against it. I was not about it, and let me tell you, my parents were not happy. um, Initially, they're on board now, but they're not happy initially, and it was off the plan. It's like, okay, so how much money you're going to make, all these other things. I was like, before I spend another 4 years in school, I need to figure out if this is something I actually want to do. And I can't do it for the sake of doing it, because that's not how my DNA, that's how I operate. And it took that time for me to realize that I was already contributing in meaningful ways in higher education and enrollment management as a student at Georgia Southern. And I applied to grad school on a whim. And honestly, I ended up where I ended up because the application was free. And I was a broke college student. And you're talking about so many open doors where these unexpected opportunities that really are catapulted based on what you're already doing, but you're really discovering, like, oh, there is a field for that. There is an opportunity for that. Let me talk to a couple of people. And you're opening yourself up to so many different ways, but it takes a lot of bravery to get there. It takes, sometimes in my case, disappointing, my parents temporarily, or being able to step outside. And I know Dr. Jackson mentioned this earlier, I had incredible advisors and mentors in my major at Georgia Southern, and being open and having that conversation with them who invested so much time into me. And also learning at the end of the day, they supported me too, and they still do today. And so it can be fearful, and it can be sometimes very ambiguous, because it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm just randomly looking at stuff. But also at the same time, it's also an excellent opportunity to explore even more. And not saying that graduate school is for everyone, because for me, that was my avenue. But whatever that may be for you, whether that's having a cup of coffee with someone who you would love to know more about their role, and you want to have an informational interview, and then that interview or that conversation catapults you into a whole different world or dimension, and understanding what may be in alignment with you. LinkedIn, there are a lot of people who are like, actually, I really enjoy what you're looking on your profile. Would you happen to have a couple of moments for a phone call, or, a Zoom chat to talk about some things? And so, for me, it has a lot to do with, what are your core missions and values? And the pressure, unfortunately, will continue to exist, but I think it does alleviate significantly as you continue to to push through it. But also, as you align yourself more, you find a little bit more peace in the process.
Mm. Oh, listen, there are people who have been in their work for 30 years, 40 years, or different lines of work, and haven't found that alignment. A lot of people find themselves in burnout because they're forcing themselves to fit into these roles, into these jobs that they were not created to do. And I always say, but before you run away, let's stop and find your genius. Let's find that brilliance. So you're not out here searching. So you're not out here just going from one thing to another and digging yourself deeper with the burden because you're not aligned. One of the things that I love about the millennial generation and I appreciate is the courage. Is the courage. It takes courage. It takes courage to say, I thought it was this, but now I'm not feeling like that's the right thing. And to understand, Janessa, even when I look at your particular path, all of that was meant to be. Chemistry at Georgia Southern was meant to be. The connections that you have, the network that you have, what you learned, not just in the textbook, but all of the things that you learned through that journey, that was meant to be for that season. At that point, you thought the goal was pharmacy school. But what people don't understand is clarity comes in the doing. You don't know what that next step is until you do the first step. So sometimes we get stuck in, I got to have a plan before I do anything. Like I
Yeah.
have to know the whole 10-year plan before I do anything. I don't want to apply for anything. I don't want to call anybody. I don't want to do anything because I got to know where I'm going. That's not how this works. I love your suggestion of connect with someone on LinkedIn, connect with a mentor, reach out to somebody. If you feel something, if a thought comes to you, or you just wonder, I wonder what this would be like, or that seems really interesting, that is just a little sign, and you can take a step. You can ask a question. You can do some research. You don't have to commit to any humongous change. One little step, and you take that one step, and maybe you have a conversation with somebody and you're like, ooh, that's not what I thought. No, that wasn't it. That wasn't it. Okay. Or you have that conversation and you're drawn in more and you're more intrigued. And it's like, what else could I do? What other step could I take? And literally, purpose is unveiled. It's unveiled as we take these steps. So instead of struggling and having this pressure of what's my purpose? Why am I here? What am I supposed to do? Take one step. Take
Yes.
one step. Like you said, the graduate application was free. And let's just try it. Let's just see what happens. Let's just see what happens. But guess what? After you did that, it worked and a door opened.
Yeah.
So you walked into that door and you
Changed
did
my life.
that thing. Yes. Yes. So this is how we find the thing that we were created to do. You know, I tell people all the time, I still don't know what I'm going to be when I grow up. I don't know. There was a day that I would tell you, oh yeah, and I'm going to do this child. That's not how this works. I believe the work I've done in the different seasons of my life, I was supposed to be at those places. And I was supposed to be doing that work. And in those seasons, you couldn't tell me I would be doing anything different. You couldn't convince me that I would not be on somebody's campus, loving on somebody's child, somebody's college
Yes.
student. You could not tell me that I would be doing anything different for the
Yes.
rest of my life. But now, as I continue to take steps, that vision is not erased, it's expanding.
Hmm.
And it looks different because it's bigger than I thought it was going to be. It's got a different bend. I've got a different perspective on it now. So all of those steps are necessary to get us to the place that we were created to be. That we were created to be. We look around and think, how in the world did I get here? How did this happen? And yes, write the vision. Absolutely. Write in your journal. Do all the things, but trust the process.
Yes. Yeah.
Trust the process. 'Cause
Mm.
there are going to be detours and there are going to be left turns and right turns that you didn't expect, that you might not even want. But all of it is important.
Right.
All of
Everything.
it is Yeah.
So thank you.
Whew. All
Thank
right, y'all.
you.
It's been my honor. It's my honor. Thank you for being a part of our conversation, our catch up today. As always, you are powerful. You better believe it. You better believe it. You are powerful. You are significant. And you are loved. Love always, PBJ.